Okay. Good evening. It is 6:41 p.m. on March 9th, and the meeting of the CDAC will begin. I will call attendance. Brandy Brown,
Here.
Susan Bucci,
Here.
Ebony Hatto, Deborah Hogan,
Present.
Justin McGregor,
Here.
Kenya Middleton, Michelle O'Loughlin,
Here.
and I'm Mary Ann Callahan. We will go right to our presenters. We have Megan Hyman from the mayor's office. Megan, we do apologize for the delay.
That's no problem at all. Thanks, Mary Ann. So not sure if you all recall, or I think we have some new faces here, but I presented the mayor's budget to CDAC. Last year, I was in a different role then. I was an assistant to the mayor for neighborhood and youth affairs. So I'm happy to be back here tonight. We don't have from HUD yet what our final allocation for this fiscal year will be. So it's difficult to provide the committee with concrete numbers that I can tell you certainly won't change. But I'm happy to speak generally on what Mayor Cram's funding priorities are and answer any questions that you might have on that to the extent that I can. So just generally speaking, the mayor's office is looking to maintain much of the funding levels for fiscal year 48 and continue our support for many of the programs and initiatives funded in recent years. A few items that I'll highlight. As always, we'll be looking to maximize staff salaries to not only support city departments, but also help offset the city tax base. And we'll look to maintain those funding levels this year. For our demolition and blight removal program, we're looking to allocate around $200,000 this year to help meet the need that we're seeing in Binghamton's neighborhoods. If you recall, last year, the mayor's office actually reduced the CDBG funding to this program, and that was due in part to the foreclosure moratorium that New York State had in place at the time, and some of the anticipated delays in the county's foreclosure process. So the foreclosure moratorium has since lifted, and the city's been working with the county to acquire blighted tax foreclosed properties for demolitions. Another priority area this year will be streets. The mayor's office is looking to, at this time, allocate roughly $300,000 to its mill and pave program. I'm sure if you've been driving around the city much, many of you have probably noticed the potholes that are popping up all over this time of year. This has been one of the worst winters we've had as it relates to conditions of city streets. In the last 8 years, the city has paved about 90 miles of streets. But this winter, for whatever reason, with the weather that we're having, seems to have set us back a bit. The mayor believes that, it's important we continue making investments in our infrastructure, and that includes really every neighborhood. So residents deserve new roads, whether they live in one of the more affluent neighborhoods in Binghamton, or if they're in a neighborhood with high rates of poverty or a distressed neighborhood. So that will continue to be a priority for us this year. And that being said, if members of the CDAC have streets in their neighborhoods, or that you drive on your way to work, or dropping your kids off at school, that you feel are in need of repair, please let us know that. We're still in the process of working with the Department of Public Works on identifying the high priority streets for this year. And like I mentioned earlier, that the mayor may want to adjust some of these numbers as we get a fuller picture of not just what our full CDBG allocation will be, but also a better picture of what the winter ends up doing to our road conditions. The human services and capital set aside as a competitive process, we're looking to maintain funding levels there. We'll also look to continue supporting youth programming and maintaining funding to the Boys and Girls Clubs and the Vines Youth Employment Program. We'll again be looking to support the CARES Backpack and School Supply Program, which I'm not sure this has been going on now since 2017. I'm not sure if it's ever been included in this part of the budget. It's something that we seem to come to see with when CARES comes to us. But we've been working with them for several years now. We know that this is a program that we want to continue supporting. Last year, we provided 1,000 backpacks filled with school supplies to city school district students. That was the most we've ever given out, and that's a number that we'll at least want to meet again this year. We are looking at setting aside $100,000 for general parks improvements, $50,000 for mental health support. If you remember, last year, money was allocated to MHAS. The city is still working with MHAS. Those funds haven't been spent yet. Steve and I just met with that agency. They had some turnover. It's our understanding that their intention is to spend that funding. It's a partnership with the Binghamton Police Department. So I can't say I foresee us allocating more money to MHAS this year since they're still working on spending what's been allocated. But we do want to earmark money for general mental health support. And we also want to maintain funding levels to Fairview Recovery Services, especially as our community has been enduring this spike recently in overdoses and seemingly regular reminders that this opioid epidemic isn't behind us. So those are just some of the highlights. I apologize for not having more exact numbers, but I hope that helps give an overview, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Megan?
Yes, I have a question.
oh, Go ahead, Sue.
So Megan, in light of today's, the article that was in the Press and Sun Bulletin today, regarding that the recreation center is probably a no-go. What about then, are you going to work to reallocate? That was $1 million, I believe, that when we met with Pat McGinnis, that's what he was presenting to us.
Yeah, so I think it was 1.1 million in CDBG that had been allocated. That was a portion of the funding. The city had also set aside some ARPA money for that project.
Mm-hmm.
The CDBG portion of that money had a sunset provision, if I'm saying that correctly, Steve, where we had a certain time to spend those funds. City council is actually.
Time limits.
Am I right on that?
There's a time limit overall to spend down any CDBG funds by a certain period of time.
So city council is actually voting tonight, if they don't hold it over, on legislation that would use a portion of that CDBG funds to meet a public safety need with the fire department. They needed a new fire truck apparatus. So a portion of that has already been earmarked. It's awaiting city council approval. The other point on the Columbus Park Youth Center project, I think this was mentioned in the newspaper article, is that the city has been following for some time now conversations with another nonprofit in St. Mary's Rec Center, which we are very supportive of. We voiced our support both to St. Mary's and the nonprofit organization that is pursuing that. Should that come through, which we're hopeful of, we would have city support to put behind that in place of the new construction youth center at Columbus Park. St. Mary's Rec Center is right across the street and would hopefully fill the same need.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Megan, real quick, you had mentioned 100K in parks. Did you have specific parks you wish to focus on?
No, I don't think we do at this time. That was an earmark that the mayor wanted to make, and I'm sure that the Parks Department probably has several shovel-ready projects.
Okay, all right.
But I don't have any more details.
Any other questions for Megan? This may be a question more for Steve, but Megan, are there any plans, since we are expanding what code enforcement is doing, are there any plans, or can there be any plans to maybe, give these guys a little bit of a salary bump? They are, they do very hard work. And
so as part of the code reform package that the mayor rolled out last week, there is a new code inspector position being funded by ARPA. In terms of the salaries for the existing code officers, those are union negotiated.
oh, okay.
So it's not as simple as a process, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? As time goes by, can you give us figures for the money that will go to the fire department and to St. Mary's, and anything else that comes out of that money?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The fire department figure, I think that cost of that truck was 800,000 roughly.
Okay.
That's what
Yeah.
city council is voting on tonight. And yes, as the St. Mary's progresses, we'll do our best to keep everyone in the loop on that.
Megan, this is Deborah Hogan. I would be very interested because it seems like a withdrawal and yet again another disappointment for Center City. So I would be very, very interested to see what programming and what support we will be garnering in the near future and projected probably the next 12 months. Be very interested in hearing that. But disappointed with the news, but not surprised. But thank you for presenting tonight.
Yeah, and the context of that is the bids for that new construction, new center project came in about 30% higher than what we expected. So there really wasn't a way for the city to move forward with it. We had allocated ARPA funds and CDBG funds, and we still had a funding shortfall. There's a separate Columbus Park improvement project that my understanding is still moving forward. So that's upgrades to the playground area and the park in general. So that's a positive, but we are hopeful on the St. Mary's Rec Center, and we'll keep you posted.
Thank you very much. It's just disappointing, and I'm kind of surprised that the project wasn't maybe reimagined and sent out for rebid. But Steve, I don't know if that caused a problem with the funding, but there are ways to do it if there's the will.
It wasn't sent out for rebid. I will tell you that it was a long process with CPL, the firm that the consultant with us on the project. It was reimagined at least throughout that process several times. And there were discussions about how, is there a way to pare this down that it's a little bit more feasible? And we did, and we still never quite got it to the point where those dollar figures or those cost figures were so high.
Megan, last question. Did you have any local contractors bidding on this, or was it all out of town?
I don't know that offhand, Deb. I wouldn't want to speak not knowing.
Okay, thank you for your candor.
Okay, are there any other questions for Megan? If not, we thank you very much for your patience and for presenting tonight, Megan. Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Megan. So it looks like both Rise is here and Captain Bidwell is here. Sorry if I said, is officer still okay?
Yeah, that's completely fine. I've been called a lot worse.
I don't know if there's okay, Captain Bidwell. All right. Schedule wise, Marianne, Rise was first, but it's up to you.
Well, Dave, how
We can
much?
put-
Dave's been waiting almost an hour now, hasn't he? 45 minutes. Does the representative from Rise mind if Officer Bidwell goes first?
Not at all.
Because he has been waiting, Officer Bidwell, would you like to present to us now? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be quick.
Okay.
So some of you guys I do know, some of you I don't. For those that I don't, my name is Dave Bidwell. I am a captain with the Binghamton Police Department, and I am the director of the Southern Tier Crime Analysis Center, which we do work for all law enforcement agencies in the Southern Tier. So as far as the police department, we are looking for funding to the tune of $25,000 to fund walking patrol overtime, bike patrol, and then also to fund for officers to go over to the Boys and Girls Club for the after school program. And then without knowing kind of what the budget is, if the city had lots of money to give, we would also look to reinstitute the Citizen Police Academy. So for some of you guys that don't know what that is, it's usually a 10 or 12 week program where citizens get to sign up, and then the police department kind of runs them through what we do. So every week would be something different. One week might be the community response team kind of going over what they do. We might have training in there one day to kind of take them through like a firearms class. The next week we'll have a representative from the detective division going through what the detectives do, just to kind of, so the citizens get to meet the people in the law enforcement and get to meet the department. And then it's just a good little community relations.
Oh, what a sweet little voice.
Don't let it fool you. I have 4. I have 3 boys, and
Ah.
this is my daughter, and
Ah.
he is whew,
She's a blessing. Come
a
on.
little young lady is what she is, which is good.
So,
So do you have any other requests, or is it that 25,000 for the overtime?
The 25 would be for walking patrol, for bike patrol, and then the Boys and Girls Club. If there was more money to be had and they were looking to go towards the police department, the Citizen Police Academy would, without having the exact numbers, but it would probably go between 6,000 and 8,000 for the 12-week class.
Okay.
Dave, where would the walking and the bike patrols go? How would that work?
So we would center it probably towards crime areas or at the request of citizens is what I did last year. So if people called in and said, you know, there's really been a lot of people who would call in and who just wanted to see the guys on the bikes or just wanted the guys on foot walking so they could have some interaction, we would orient them towards that location as long as it fell in the area of the CBDG, as long as it qualified for that. And then obviously.
Deborah, did you have something to ask? Deborah?
Oh, sorry. I
Nope,
muted
it
it 'cause
just,
I thought it was the feedback.
oh, thank you. Just if there is the extra money for Citizen Police Academy, I'm a multiple attendee, and having neighbors from across the city learn about the department, what the different, but most important is putting a face to that particular department. I'm just learning, you know, tonight there's a change in crime prevention. I don't know the new officer. Being able to be in those classes, it is a phenomenal program, and they even had a spin-off several years ago. It was a youth police academy, and the dividends it pays for community relations is phenomenal. So that's my pitch.
Are there any other questions for the officer? One more question about the walking and the bike patrol, because just as Deb is very fond of the classes, I'm very fond of a presence in the neighborhoods. I think that makes a huge difference. And we've talked about that even at our neighborhood watch meetings. If you could get more money for that program, would that allow you to do more and to be in more places?
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as crime prevention, for like our budget's pretty small when it comes to overtime. We kind of marry it with CPTED. So CPTED is crime prevention through environmental design. So they kind of go hand in hand. And so it's a limited pot. So I write grants for it every year. And I mean, it's a small number that we pull from. But at the end of the day, the chief of police, if there was, you know, a neighborhood meeting that they wanted us at, we would make it happen no matter how we had to do it. But if there was obviously more money, then I could send guys all day long if
Cool.
that was the case. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question.
absolutely.
So this program that you're speaking of, the walk and bike patrol, so that is separate from the park ranger program. Is
Yeah.
that park ranger thing, that's through the Parks Department, correct?
I think that is through the Parks Department. I'm not positive whether or not that comes through the police budget or not, but they're not police officers, so I'm
No,
pretty sure.
I know they're not police officers, but I didn't know if that, okay,
So
it is the
The
parks,
ranger, yeah, the ranger program is through the parks.
right?
And I believe they asked for it. I can't remember if they asked for it or not.
Are those patrols, are those part of community policing? Is that what it falls under?
Yeah, I monitor that, so it would fall under the community, yes,
Okay. And that's been something that people have indicated would be a very good thing for us to sort of grow in this
Yeah.
community.
I sat on the police reimagination panel, and I think the two biggest takeaways from there were training and then more citizen interaction via
Mhm.
bike patrols or foot patrols. But that was a big one that came up, yes.
Thank you. Anything else? We thank you and
Thank
your
you.
daughter. Thank
Yes,
you very
thank you.
much.
Thank you.
She
Have a good
added a
night.
nice part to your presentation. She really
Exactly, exactly. The
Thank
policeman
you.
is your friend, yes.
did.
He's
Have a good
human, he
night,
has
guys.
children. Thanks, Dave.
Good
Thank
night.
you very
Thank you.
much. And now we have the person from RISE.
Hi, my name is Nicole Barron. I am the Executive Director of RISE. And just to give you some background on RISE, we were founded in 1979 and we provide comprehensive domestic violence services. So we actually operate one of the oldest domestic violence shelters in New York State. And we have a capacity of up to 20 beds at a time. We also have a very robust non-residential program that will serve victims who don't want or need shelter. So basically what that is our non-residential programs. We have advocacy services and we work out of various departments. We have 2 at local police departments, 2 at Child Protective Services, and then 1 at Family Court. And we also have a counseling program and community education program. So to kind of give you an idea of like our impact last year, we, in our non-residential side, we worked with 1,964 survivors. We had 2,357 calls to our 24-hour hotline. We provided 3,111 safe shelter nights to 171 adults and children. And then we also provided an additional 68 motel bed nights when we couldn't accommodate victims due to COVID exposure infection. And then we provided 560 individual and group counseling sessions. So it seems like every year our numbers keep getting higher. So one of the things, you know, if we had unlimited financial resources, is we'd put it towards like staff funding, because we like, especially with, you know, like pay rising at other places, like it's a struggle for nonprofits to pay staff competitively. And our staff, like, you know, deals with secondary trauma. They get compassion fatigue is common. We get a lot of burnout. So, you know, just having money to pay staff competitively. The other problem is that like our staff are paid under a hodgepodge of different grants. So it's not like, you know, it's one grant will cover 100% of a staff's funding. So we kind of have to worry about how to make it match every year. The other thing is we have 2 very old buildings. So there's always like a very long list of items that need to be repaired in both buildings. That's both our shelter building and our administrative office that has our non-residential programs. So as far as like the needs of our victims, I'd say the biggest one is affordable housing. We actually were very fortunate. We got through the Office of Prevention for Domestic Violence. We received like some sizable funding to actually help survivors with rent and utilities and like safety updates and even like furniture and things like that. The problem is like there's not a lot of housing available. So even though we have this money, they have to like first find something. So I'd say for domestic violence survivors too, this is like a huge struggle because I mean, not having like a safe place to live, you know, that they can't heal from their trauma, they can't be safe. So one of the things with our shelter clients is, we struggle to find them safe, affordable housing so they can discharge. And because they're staying in shelter longer, that means we don't have space, to help the next victim. So that's been a large problem. The other thing is we've actually had to recently advise someone who called our hotline seeking assistance to kind of, I guess, judge accordingly, because she had a real threat to her safety. However, she was also in a great housing program. So, we had to advise her, it's really hard to find safe housing, so you can make this decision on your own, but just know that, it might be hard to move into something else. So these are kind of our biggest problems. I'd say affordable housing, has been up there for quite some time, and I'm sure you hear that a lot, but from the domestic violence side, it really has a huge impact on how we provide services.
Are there any questions for Nicole?
Just real first, you answered my barriers question. So I always ask the stakeholders the barriers question. Do you have any recent studies or data on numbers of DV, domestic violence victims in the area? Any breakdowns by types of DV or breakdowns of specific groups affected more than others? Ethnicities, poverty ranges, those kinds of things?
So we do, I'd actually have to pull it. I don't know it offhand. Some of the data that we have, like on a county level, it's usually like a couple of years coming out delayed.
Yeah.
The details. So really what we have is like our own data. And that would just be, like survivors that actually come to us for assistance. There's so many more, that aren't seeking help.
Is there any way I could get data? Obviously, you clean it up, filter it, take out all the identifying stuff, but I'm just looking for numbers, even at the county level, especially changes in numbers. So if there's been an increase or decrease of certain groups, and like I said before, broken down into ones that are, what you would call a normal DV, and then say individuals that have been victims of sex trafficking or anything like that as well. I need all this. It's like any data is great for me because it helps me to create the action plan. It helps us justify expenditures and so on. So if there's anything you can provide me with, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Nicole, I had a quick question. The last case that you just gave us, it sounds like it is the abused who has to leave and not the abuser. Is that the case? Is that what usually happens?
So this specific instance, they were not housed together. He was just stalking her.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God. One of the things that you do mention is things that we're hearing from so many other agencies is the lack of affordable housing. And I don't quite know what we can do about it, but it's good for us to know that this is happening. Are there any other questions for Nicole?
Yeah, I have a quick question, Nicole. Those are really high numbers of all the people that you've helped and that have gone through. Can you tell me how little your staff is? I mean, how many people does it take to help all these people? I mean, I know you could always use more, but how many?
We have 20 staff members total.
Okay.
And I think about 2 of them are part-time and the rest are full-time.
Wow.
Wow. That's a lot of people. I mean, it's not many staff to help so many people. So that's what I was looking for.
Especially in those circumstances.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? We are, go ahead,
Oh,
Steve.
I
Sorry.
have one more question. I know RISE obviously focuses on women. Do you have any programs or even recommendations for male or transgender male clients that are victims of DV as well?
I'm in misconception. We help victims like regardless of gender,
Oh, okay.
ethnicity, yeah, sexual orientation. We help everyone.
Okay, because I know you have the one shelter, and I didn't know if there was other, if you keep just women in that one shelter, if you have, you know.
Yeah, so we actually would just house like, we do have like a smaller number, like male identifying survivors, but what we do is we just, everybody has their own separate bedroom. So there's 7 separate bedrooms. So we just place them in separate bedrooms.
Does that ever create like fear issues where, say, a woman in your shelter sees a man in the shelter as well and automatically might react fearfully from like PTSD kind of thing?
We haven't really come across that actually. We have some male staff members currently and in the past. Like usually when we have contractors or something, we will, kind of tell the shelter residents that there's going to be people coming through that aren't familiar to them. But yeah, we've never had an issue with that.
Nicole, I just had a real quick question too. You say that people call you and try to find you. Do they find you through the 211 program, or is there another way that they usually do?
Yep. Yeah. We actually got a lot of calls to the 211. A lot of people will call like the state hotline and get referred to us. Our hotline number is on our website, social media. Like anytime we do like radio announcements or any kind of advertising, we make sure that our hotline number is out there. It's on any of our business cards, our email signatures. So it's out there.
And you've been around for a long time, so probably you have quite the reputation, I would imagine.
Yeah, one of the things I think that kind of harmed us is when we first opened, we were known as the SOS shelter. And that was in place for, I think, around most of our time, but I think sometime around 2014 or so, we were branded to Rise, which is kind of like a more uplifting name and kind of reflected all of the services we provided. But, sometimes people still refer to us as SOS Shelter and don't know we're the same as Rise. So that led to some confusion.
Oh, that's good to know. Justin, did you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Because I can't hear myself. So,
Okay.
I was just wondering, you said there was an increase in the numbers. I was just wondering if you had a rough estimate on the increase during the COVID period over what you'd had before, or if it's been a significant rise or it's just been kind of steady up.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Like initially, well, during lockdown is kind of what you'd expect is we got a lot fewer people reaching out for help. We did kind of in response to people sheltering at home, we had a new online chat program so that people could reach out for help, because previously it was just calling through the telephone, and you obviously can't do that if your abuser's in the next room. So numbers have kind of picked up with like COVID restrictions loosening. Our shelter has actually been pretty low capacity compared to like previous years, but I think it's understandable. Like people don't really want to be in a congregate setting when there's a pandemic going on, but our non-residential program has continued to have very high numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Nicole, we thank you very much. We can't imagine what you go through every day, but we thank you very much for what you do. And thank you for taking the time to answer these questions and to speak with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And Nicole, always feel free. I know you guys are not located in Binghamton, but if you are looking to do any sort of expansion, generally we only assist programs that assist Binghamton residents. Shelters are kind of weird because homeless doesn't really have an address. So, but if you guys ever wanted to do any sort of expansion, or if you guys wanted to work with the Y on some sort of expansion, I know they're doing it was like scattered site DV rental assistance programs. If you wanted to partner with them and you were looking at some costs, come give me a call. We can talk about what funds would be available and like a time frame when you could get them and if you wanted to apply for a program. So you should have my phone number and the email I had sent out. So yeah, please feel free to contact me.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You all too.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
And I guess,
Unhappy child there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone wanted mom bad.
exactly.
I noticed, by the way, she never turned around that I saw that
No,
she's used to this.
She never missed a beat.
no.
Yeah.
Gonna be
That was
like,
She was
give me
good.
10 minutes.
Mhm.
Give me 10 minutes.
It
I'm
was
gonna.
very good.
And she had good support because somebody soothed
Somebody
that,
was doing
that
something.
little cry. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
See, it's all real. It's so real. The
So-
last thing we have to do before we adjourn is the minutes.
well, we do have the 2 discussions of mental health and veterans.
Oh, did you
I
want to
can
do
make-
those?
Yeah, I can make these short and sweet.
Okay, I'm sorry,
So just like everything else, these are all related, and I'm going to tell you, and these are just the anecdotal stuff and what I'm exposed to at the COC meetings. And I can tell you that mental health, homelessness, disabilities, and even veterans stuff can be all mixed together. Mental health, you have your developmental disabilities, but think like achieve what they do. And that's one aspect, but then you have the other source of mental health problems, which is PTSD. You have just depression. A lot of that is then linked in or inherently connected with drug usage, specifically opiates. And then we have issues with the opioid crisis, that say Fairview deals with. So I did reach out to the veterans group, the Broome County Veterans Support Services. Never got a call back. I'm probably next time I would contact Soldier On or something like that. They deal with veterans homelessness specifically, or possibly even the VA. But understand all of these issues are interconnected. We do have homeless veterans still, and understand it's not as simple. Of all the groups that we've talked about, that's the one group it's difficult to sometimes get those people into programs because, as a veteran told me once, you get done, you're done with people telling you what to do. And whatever you've dealt with, you don't want to be around people. So a lot of them do this sort of like eternal camping kind of thing. But we do have street outreach through the Y and stuff like that, trying to get them into programs and support programs. VA, Soldier On, all those work together. So we do have some Chodo projects for veterans, like the Pine Street Project, where they're getting supportive assistance and either assisted or free housing. So those things exist out there. I don't know if there's like a sudden uptick with Afghanistan and Iraq. We even have more recent veterans, obviously, with their issues. And who knows what might happen here in the near future, hopefully nothing. But veterans as a group are exposed to things that normal people often aren't. So just be aware of that. And just like I swear every group has said that affordable housing is the big deal, and that is true. But also supportive housing. There are reasons people are homeless. There are reasons people are doing drugs. They may not be what you would think of as good reasons, but there are reasons people are in these situations. So the affordable housing is one aspect, but the support services that are also necessary to keep them in housing, those are useful as well. Just to keep people, just honestly, just the casework. That's important as well. So that's all I really wanted to talk to you about that with mental health and veterans groups. So just be aware of those things when you make your decisions.
Steve, what do we do with, I can't remember, and this is terrible, I should know, mental health organizations? We don't fund MHAS, do we?
Yeah, we've had some trouble reaching out to them because the MHAS program that the city wanted to support last year was the crisis counselor, I think they call it, a crisis something. It's the one where the police run into someone and they've had the training to say, okay, this person has a mental health issue. Let me
Yeah.
call MHAS. And
Yeah,
then MHAS shows
exactly.
up. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you've seen these guys, but they're like tech gear. They are ready to deal with anything. And they come in and they help talk to and communicate with the individuals. So there are grants for that, but the city was providing them MS funds to expand last year. Nothing came of it because they had a bunch of staff turnover. So we're talking to them this year about getting them assistance. But depending on how you want to define mental health, there's also Achieve, the summer program. There's also chemical dependency groups like Fairview. And then, like I've said before, the homelessness situation, that's just a mixed bag of everything. So you're going to see people that check every single box of problems they have, and mental health is almost always one of them. And that's so yeah. So understand when you're supporting groups, you're going to be dealing with several probably categories at once.
Yeah, the reason I asked was because of the police group that met last year, and there was, there was a big press to make sure that the police had resources, that they wouldn't go out to a call alone. And I know that the county, I think we had an incident in our neighborhood and people showed up, and I think they were from the county, but it was really important in that group discussion that, MHAS have these people as well. So is that something that we could look into as we move forward again?
Well, I mean, the mayor's office is absolutely going to fund them. I know
Okay.
that. They were going to be funded last year, and they are currently funded through some other programs. But yeah, you'll see them.
It was a
You
staffing.
look, you probably saw some that had, it literally says MHAS across their stab vests, and they have helmets on. I mean, it's amazing. So, but yeah, MHAS is one of the groups that
Okay.
is currently being assisted, and the mayor's office will probably automatically allocate funds to them.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I missed it. I don't have it on my list of the things that she talked about. So is there anything else that you want to talk about, Steve?
No, unless anybody has any questions about our current status of anything we're doing. I think I mentioned that the TBRA money is being moved around for security deposits. BHA is supposed to give me some numbers. So if we want to do TBRA next year, which would be what you guys are making a decision on now, I want them to give me those numbers so we know. Like I said, they're doing it a little different because they don't, what we're giving them, even though we were giving them $238,000, it's not enough money for the number of clients they would serve plus administrative costs for them to expand their Section 8 program with it. So they basically said, no, but we'd like to do security deposits, which we can't currently do with Section 8, and you can do with TBRA. And I said, how many people ask for assistance with security deposits? And she goes, 100%. And I went, okay, so that seems like a reasonable thing. And I've heard it through other things too, that security deposits sometimes are one of the more difficult things to pay for. The homelessness prevention and RR funds can include security deposits. So I think Finn does, if they need it, they will help them with that as well. I think what else has changed recently. We are working on a home ARP thing that requires, I have to get the a housing study going soon. I've gone to the COC about it, but what that is we got an additional $2 million, almost $2 million of home funds, and it's specifically for rental creation, rental rehabs for people that are homeless. It's like a combination of things. So, cute dog. But it's we're still working on that. That will come to you guys probably later this year to talk about. I don't know how long the housing study is going to take. But more than likely it's going to be some sort of like Chodo rental rehab type thing. We're going to do.
What do you mean by rental rehab?
So like a Chodo project is when an agency like First Ward or Family Enrichment Network or OFP, well, sorry, it's Greater Opportunities now. They will take a unit, usually they'll either build new, which is possible, or they'll take like a multi-family unit and purchase it, rehab it, and then the money we give them is going to be used to provide X number of low income rental units. I'm trying to think of some examples of that.
Like the NOMA projects and things that,
Yeah, oh, the 435 State Street, part of that was done as a Chodo. The veterans one on Pine is a Chodo.
Mhm.
Those kinds of things. And that's one way, people are saying affordable housing, that's one way of dealing with that. I will say though, a lot of those aren't just affordable housing, they're supportive housing, in that it is affordable housing, but it includes case management aspects as well. So non-case management affordable housing, that is not as common. But there are some programs like Broome County had Broome County had a HUD grant to do lead abatement for rental units. Oh, one thing I had thought about after the last thing with the with Stick presenting, and I talked to did I tell you guys about, maybe I didn't tell you guys about this, an idea to use CDBG funding for removing barriers for rental units. And the idea is a lot of landlords do not want to deal with like CDBG funds, because then they have to do income verification for X number of years. They're not going to want to deal with it. I don't blame them. But what we could do by removing barriers is, that's fine. We've removed barriers. Doesn't matter who's living in there. We've removed disability barriers. So we could come to a landlord or who's like, I would like to rent to you, but I can't afford to widen doorways and put grab bars. Well, the city steps in, widens doorways, installs grab bars, and then that unit is now able to be used by anyone who needs wider doorways and grab bars. So the mayor's office seemed somewhat interested in this when I had talked to him about it. I got to do a little bit more digging on that, but that's one way of increasing the availability of units, at least for the disabled. As a, some other things we thought of was installing the flashing smoke alarms for individuals with vision or hearing loss, and things like that, because those don't really intrinsically add that much value to a home. It's not like it's not like we're going to do a roof and then the landlord's going to be like, I'm kicking this guy out and I'm going to charge the next guy more rent. You can't really do that with, your doorways are widening, we put grab bars in the shower. I mean, it's something that's useful to expand the amount of existing housing to more people. It's kind of the way I was thinking about it. And it should be okay from a HUD's perspective that we don't have to track the incomes of the residents in the future. So that was just one other thing we had come up with. And
Steve, once the landlord has done that kind of thing, because of the transient nature of rentals, sometime, is there a list or something? What's the continuation of that being an apartment that's disabled?
Well, I mean, it's the landlord then can rent to anyone who is disabled. It's not the modifications aren't going to make it into a situation where he's now automatically going to be able to charge more because he's going to have a higher quality apartment. But it's now allows him or her to rent to anyone who just needs that sort of access. So that's kind of the way my thinking of it. So I don't know. You guys can think about it too. I'm still trying to formulate it in my head on how to work on something like this as a sort of different sort of rehab program than our home owner rehab. But it's just an option. I'm trying to think what else. New housing we can do, but we'd have to do it through home. And it gets very expensive and very much more cumbersome. CDBG funds are really hard to use for new units. It's almost always rehab of existing units. And with a HUD, you have to track everything. And there's a paperwork issue with using CDBG and home funds for rehab projects.
But rehabbing existing stock is really what we need in this community, isn't it? I mean, that's
we have tons of units. What we don't have are very many quality, affordable units. So that is an issue. Yeah, and then unfortunately, modifications in existing units can sometimes be more expensive than tearing down and building new. Plus, our historical planners shot down my idea of saying, what if we demolished a building and built it back the exact same look with brand new materials that would be like, 20% cheaper? And he's like, you can't. I'm not changing the nature of the neighborhood. Come on, but yeah.
Sometimes you need to change the nature of the neighborhood.
Well, yeah, but the historical aspect of this of the city, we really are in a bind when it comes to the historical nature of the buildings in the city, unfortunately. So
Does that,
it's
does
difficult.
that apply to house rental stock especially? I mean, what are
Rental
you
stock
talking about?
especially, but yeah, most of it is rents in the city itself. And a lot of them are a lot of them in the situation where, my parents died, I grew up in that house, I live somewhere else, I'm going to rent it to have extra money, and then the buildings are so old and they have so many environmental hazards and things turn to crap. And then you have the speculator kind of things where people come in, they buy units and they just run them into the ground. They just don't care. And as soon as the code things fly up, they just, basically abandon the properties or don't care if the county takes them, just stop paying taxes. So it's difficult with the city. We're having, it's just difficult with our housing stock here.
There may be opportunities as the mayor's reforms take place.
Yeah.
To do that.
I think that's part of the code enforcement reforms. And I think they're trying with the ARPA funds, which is that like 20 million or $40 million. They're looking at some projects doing that stuff too. But that's kind of beyond what we do here. So
no, but we could help maybe in some certain neighborhoods. We could actually be useful.
Or you can back it up so you can improve a neighborhood. So let's say they do want to do one of these ARPA funds for renovating a block. You could use CDBG funds for putting a little mini park at the end, or doing the street improvements or the lighting or something like that.
Yeah, a holistic approach would be best.
Yes.
Okay.
Steve, this is Deborah. Just a quick thing. Other communities have done the curb appeal to like the front porch for funding. Is there any small loans that homeowners, small landlords, kind of the everyday people could access?
So are you talking about sidewalk improvements, or are you talking about even yard improvements and front porch improvements?
Basically curb appeal, if the sidewalk does need to be done. Right now it's a 50-50 split, with the city. For some people that's off-putting, but just, front porch repairs, stair repairs, anything, again, that improves the look and feel of the neighborhood. It's, kind of skin deep. Just curious.
Well, I mean, the rehab program is the best example of homes being rehabbed. It's difficult to use CDBG funds for rehabs beyond our rehab program, because people on the rehab program that have been on the waiting list 10 years might get very upset. Trying to think. Regarding sidewalks, absolutely. I know there's a 50-50 program, and I thought I talked to DPW about this. You could use CDBG funds to maybe pay that 50% or even cover the whole cost, as long as the where it is qualifies. It should be a low mod residential area. We can do business facade improvements. BLDC has a restricted loan account, but it can be used for some facade improvements in business districts and business areas, or just in front of businesses. But yeah, the sidewalk thing is going to be, or the front porch is going to be difficult outside of our existing rehab program. And like I said, that's got like a really long list, a waiting list.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? If not,
Did we do the minutes?
that's what I was just about to do. So, do we have any discussion about the minutes, or do I have a motion to approve? Nobody wants to move to approve.
You know what?
I make a motion.
I didn't see the minute.
Oh,
Didn't I send them in the thing?
No, we
No,
got two agendas.
Oh,
Yo, you know what? Yes,
we
you
didn't get
did.
the minutes.
Yes, you did. I
all
wondered
right.
about that.
Scrap it for next time.
Okay, we'll
All
do
right.
it next time. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
my bad. That's
I'm just
totally my
going
bad.
off of the list.
Nope, nope, I thought I'd sent them out. I guess I didn't. Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Well, that explains why there were two agendas. That
All right,
does
yeah,
make
that does.
sometimes we stumble over the obvious.
And then I
Um,
sent the DSS one that was actually
Yeah.
the other one.
But other
All right.
than that, we're right on target. We're
Yeah,
doing really
I'll
well.
fix that.
Okay. Then I guess we have a motion to adjourn, and then I'll take attendance.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay. Final attendance, Brandy Brown,
Here.
Susan Bucci,
Here.
Ebony Hatto, Deborah Hogan,
Present.
Justin McGregor,
Here.
Michelle O'Laughlin,
Here.
Kenya Middleton, and I'm Mary Ann Callahan, and we are adjourned. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
7:36
See you in 2
PM.
weeks.
Two
Sorry
Okay,
about
yes,
my
see you in 2
delay.
weeks.